With more than 6,000 small and microcap companies listed, if you're looking for the next apple at the earliest stage, then channelchek truly is the orchard. The listed companies support channelchek, so it's free for you, the potential investor, to gain access to institutional quality research from FINRA licensed analysts, advanced market data, industry reports, news, and a growing catalog of videos and webcasts. Make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel and register for channelchek so you're always up to date on what's going on at the small and microcap data place. Welcome to the C-Suite series presented by channelchek and Noble Capital Markets. Noble is an SEC-registered, FINRA-licensed broker-dealer and the source of the equity research available on channelchek. Today's interview features Great Bear Resources, OTC ticker symbol GTBAF, TSXV ticker symbol GBR. Noble Senior Research Analyst Mark Reichman interviews Great Bear Resources President and CEO Chris Taylor. Visit channelchek.com or click the link in the description for Noble's research on Great Bear Resources, as well as news and advanced market data. And now, here's Mark and Chris.
Hi, Chris. It is great to see you.
Good to see you again, Mark.
Chris, would you please share a little about your background and how you became affiliated with Great Bear Resources?
Yeah, okay. Well, I've been with the company now for over 10 years. So my background is as a structural geologist. I've spent a number of years working for a mid-tier mining company, and that let me see a number of projects that went into development. So I was actually hired with Great Bear back originally as the Vice President Exploration when the company was working in British Columbia. And during the last decline in the mining cycle back in about 2012, I was asked to come on the board and rebuild the company with a focus on easily accessible projects in like a tier 1 type mining jurisdiction, and that was the basis for the modern iteration of Great Bear. It's been a long time getting it to here, but it's certainly been an exciting process in the meantime.
Now, how did the other members of your executive team and board complement your leadership?
Well, what I've done over the years as Great Bear has been reborn and reiterated is I've reconstructed the board and management team to fit what the company is doing actively at the time. And that means like about 6 years ago, I brought on Bob Singh. He's somebody that I knew from back in my advanced exploration, the mining days. Bob is the VP exploration for Great Bear, and he's the fellow that found us the Dixie Project in the first place. So he was the first addition. But what we did over time was we added initially directors that were very experienced in the exploration and junior company stage when we were at that level. And more recently, we've added people like Michael Kenyon, Gil Lawson, and Paula Rogers, who have big project building and development experience. In Mike's case, he's sold many projects to majors, I think roughly about $5 billion worth of project sales over the years. And in Gil Lawson's case, he operated the main Red Lake gold mine for many years, which is the big operation. It's almost 30 million ounces produced now, which is just down the road from the Dixie Project. Paula Rogers' case, it was big project financing. So what we've seen over the years is as Great Bear requires skill sets on the board, we bring them in to get us to that next level of growth. And that's a process that's ongoing, and it's something that we've been very successful with to date.
For investors that may be unfamiliar, would you provide a high-level sketch of the company's holdings?
Our principal asset, Mark, is the Dixie Project, and that's located in the Red Lake District of Ontario. And I'm always advised to keep to a couple of key talking points. And if I had to describe the project in just a few words, number one would be top jurisdiction because it's in the Red Lake area, and this is one of the tier 1 major high-grade gold mining jurisdictions in Canada. It's a great place to find a discovery like ours. The other one is that it's big and it's high grade and it goes right to the surface right beside the highway. So I guess that's really a number of points together. But the combination of high grade from surface gold, location near the infrastructure, power lines, paved highway, and a major mining camp, it really sets Great Bear aside. We're not located up on top of a mountain or in the Arctic or in a terrible jurisdiction to work in. It's one of the best places in the world. And we've been fortunate that our geological detective work led to a major discovery that was literally about a 15-minute drive outside of town and right beside the highway and the power lines.
Well, you mentioned the infrastructure. So you picked up this project in 2017. And so before we talk about the drilling program, could you just elaborate on each of the known zones at Dixie?
Well, our thesis when we got involved in this property was that there was one of these major big transcrustal structures. Like I always make the analogy, if you had to get a bunch of water to go through your granite countertops at home, it would be virtually impossible unless you smash it first. So in the Red Lake area, all the mines, the big mines, are lined up along one of these big structures. But what we noticed on the data was that there was another big structure that was largely unstaked that we based our property on. We staked that land and we've been drilling it ever since. So what we found in our project, the Dixie Project, is a big feature, this big structural feature called the LP fault zone. So far, we've got gold drilled along 11 kilometers of this structure, and we're focused on resource definition drilling in the middle sort of 4 to 5 kilometer long segment of the middle of the property. But beside that, you have other gold zones, which are similar to everything else that's been mined in the Red Lake area so far. These are the Dixie Limb Zone, the Hinge Zone, and now the Arrow Zone. Effectively, what we found on the project is because of the big structure that goes through, there's a many kilometers long, over 11 kilometers long structure, and that's about 1.5 kilometers wide in terms of the zones that it contains, multiple gold zones that are parallel, largely parallel to each other. And that's what we've been drilling. And that's why you have so many gold zones together. They all go right to surface, and they're all controlled by those big underlying structures on this project.
Well, so now that you've introduced kind of the main zones, would you talk a little about the drilling programs in each of these zones to date? And I know earlier on it started at Hinge and Dixie Limb, and then you moved on to the LP fault. And then also let's talk a little bit about the plan going forward.
Okay, I guess I can sum that up all in one spot, Mark. So if you're thinking about a typical gold zone, and I was fortunate enough that we put one of these into production in Nevada several years ago, actually about a decade ago now. It's called the Sterling Mine. And usually a high-grade gold zone will be at 200, 300 meters long. So say when my fingers, that's say 200 meters between the fingers. What we found at the LP fault is kilometers long, so it would go right off the screen. And what we're doing right now is just systematically drilling holes every 40 or 50 meters or so along the strike length of this LP fault. And what that lets us do is resource definition drilling across many kilometers. And of course, because of the size of the target, it takes a while to drill this off. So despite the fact that we're now at the point where we have about 300 drill holes into the LP fault over the last 2 years since its discovery, we think that we need another approximately 100 holes, which should be complete around the end of this calendar year, around the end of 2021. And that will give us enough information to then disclose the initial maiden resource just in the near surface of what we found here at the LP fault zone. So keeping in mind that all the mines in the area, the significant ones, and I'm talking about, if we just focus on the big Red Lake mine complex, it's been mined down to about 2.5 kilometers vertical depth. We think that what we can generate at the LP fault is a very significant, like a regionally significant gold zone at the LP, even just in the top 500 meters. So really, from that point of view, you're just scratching the surface. But I think at that point, with what we're seeing in the high grade continuous panels of gold mineralization along kilometers, is you're going to see something with very appealing economics. And that's what we're going to provide when we get around to the maiden resource publication early next year.
Now that the main zones have been introduced, would you talk about the drilling programs in each of these zones to date and the plan going forward?
Yeah, Mark, what we're focused on right now is a definition drilling program at the LP fault zone in the first sort of 0 meters depth, because the gold goes right to the surface, down to about 500 meters depth. And we're putting in a grid of drill holes along about 4 to 5 kilometers. And that grid of drill holes is basically every 40 to 50 meters. So it's a systematic approach to systematically drilling off, that maiden resource at that level. And then the same process needs to be repeated at the Dixie Limb and Hinge zone. So at that point, right now, to date, we have approximately 150 drill holes at the Dixie Limb and Hinge zone, most of them in the top 300 to 400 meters from surface, but we've already hit gold down to about 8 800 meters depth. So we need to fill in that intervening space and define the gold mineralization there, and then continue with the big target, the LP fault, in the near surface gold mineralization, between surface and about 500 meters.
Now the LP fault, perhaps you want to elaborate on kind of the strike length, because it seems like you've been able to demonstrate the size of the zone, and now you're kind of focusing on depth, or proving out the depth. So what would you envision a mining scenario to look like? Would it be a combination of both open pit and underground mining?
That, in my mind, Mark, that is the most likely scenario. If you look at similar deposits of this scale, you have to compare apples to apples. And some of the big ones in Canada, maybe one of the best examples for a big sort of bulk tonnage type mine is Canadian Malartic, which is operated by Agnico Eagle and Yamana. That's approximately 3.5 kilometers long in terms of what's the open pit size. And if you compare that to what we've drilled so far at the LP fault at Dixie, the LP fault zone, we're drilling off a grid now that's about 4 to 4.5 kilometers long. And it's just a similar sort of footprint of mineralization. So not talking about the contained ounces, our deposit, our system skews more on the high grade side, but it does have a big low grade halo around the high grade mineralization as well. What I think will be the most likely scenario here is that you'll see a mine plan that would be built around an open pit, a high grade open pit on the central LP fault zone, expanding to a larger sort of bulk tonnage operation, and then followed by underground mining down to depth below that. Because the deepest holes that we have on the project now at about 800 meters depth, which is roughly twice the depth of really any open pit in Canada, that is a very nice high grade gold mineralization. If you look at the adjacent mines, they're mined down to up to 2.5 kilometers vertical depth. So from that point of view, we've only really defined the near surface portion of the mineralized system so far. So over the long term, and it's not definable at the moment, there's no way you could define all the mineralization out of the gate, but you could define the economics and the size of the near surface portion, and then the potential, you could put drill holes in down to depth and show that you have a mineralized system that continues and could proceed for years of mining on the underground side after that. That's what we aim to show with the 2021 drill program, is the potential for both of those scenarios.
So what is your goal in terms of proving out a resource?
What we'd like to see is a multi-million ounce in-pit type resource on the bulk tonnage side, followed by clear demonstration that there's high-grade potential going down to depth. And what that would do, if you can combine those, usually you don't hear these two words in the same sentence, high-grade and bulk tonnage. But if we can do a low-cost bulk tonnage near surface type operation that is also high grade, what that can lead to is really nice project economics, because what the industry is looking for is long life projects with rapid paybacks on the build cost. And of course, they like to see predictability. They like to see the infrastructure access. They like to see that these things are in a mineable area, like a mining jurisdiction. And I think that Great Bear can deliver on all of these things. So I would watch for the results that come out over the remainder of 2021, and then look forward to early next year, that initial maiden resource publication.
So when do you expect to publish a maiden resource estimate and preliminary economic assessments?
We think right now we have approximately 300 drill holes at the LP fault, and while for most gold discoveries that would be sufficient to develop initial resources, for us, due to the size, it simply isn't. Even if you drill a hole every 50 meters on average across a 4.5 kilometer structure, right now we have 6 drill rigs doing that on a daily basis, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. It still takes years to drill off a target that size, simply because it's so much larger than normal. So we should, with 300 drill holes in hand right now, we think by the end of this year, when we're at approximately 400 drill holes, the end of 2021, that should be enough drilling to do the initial calculations of a maiden resource just in the near surface portions of the system, the top sort of 400, 500 meters. So I think what we're going to see is delivery of a maiden resource early next year, most likely in the first quarter of next year, but we're working with the engineers and the resource planners. They're doing all the block modeling and everything on the project right now, and I should have a definitive timeline in the relatively near future. We will communicate that to the market when we know the exact date.
Well, Great Bear has a strong balance sheet. What are your funding needs for this year and 2022?
Really, to summarize it, we don't have any funding needs. We have almost $100 million in the bank. Probably at the end of this year, we'll be sitting at about $60 million in the bank going into 2022. And that means that with a $45 million annual drill budget, or annual project budget, most of which is drilling, we have enough money for 2 calendar years of this type of current work. Now, next year, when we get the initial resources out and probably the PEA shortly thereafter, I think at that point we think about what the next needs of the project are going to be. There may be a requirement to finance at that point, but to continue doing what we're doing now, there's nothing in 2021 and there's nothing in the first part of 2022 either. We are more than fully funded for all that work that we need to do.
Now, what are your plans for your properties outside of the Dixie project?
What we're thinking about with the other projects is we've staked them with a view to having discovery potential. So using some of the same methodologies that we use to make the new discovery at Dixie, the LP fault zone, we've got other targets. They usually involve big regional fold structures, adjacent mineralization and rock types that we like, and the possibility for hosting undiscovered mineralized zones. So we continue to do early stage exploration on these projects, and some of them may even be drilled over the course of the year. But we picked up the other projects in the region because they have discovery potential, and we'd like to test that potential ourselves, because nothing adds value to a junior company more than discovery, and of course resource definition, economics, these other factors. But the reason we picked up those properties is because they look prospective for hosting more gold.
Well, Chris, earlier in the interview, you talked about the composition of your management team and the board. So is this project something that you would be interested in advancing to production yourself, or do you think it's more likely that it would be acquired by a larger intermediate or senior production company?
I think it's a great question. I get asked this a lot. So every company in our position, you have to think like, we found something that we think will be a long life project. We think it'll have a very fast payback. We think it's going to have a low operational cost. And we're in the process of showing all these things. And these are very rare. Like there may be in total something like 30 of these projects on the planet, and they form the basis of all the major mining operations for the major mining companies. So they're all looking for these criteria of projects. If Great Bear has one of those, and again, this is the exploration, discovery, and definition process that we're going through right now. If we do, we'll be one of the only junior companies in the world sitting on something like this. And they're all worth, if you look at comparative valuation, just look through the history books at what these projects get sold for, it's in the billions of dollars, right? So we want to make sure that we capture as much benefit for our shareholders as possible. I've been a shareholder of Great Bear for over 10 years, and I've purchased my position in the market and in the private placements just like everybody else. So what we want to see is share performance. We want to see returns for our investors, and we want to do it in an orderly way, you know, based on results, based on the true potential of the project. We don't hype, we don't promote very much, we just deliver results to the market, and we want to show what we think are going to be industry leading economics. So that's what I want to do, is focus on that process, deliver that value to shareholders. And one of the best ways to do that is keep moving the project down its path towards development. And I've put people onto the board that are building the mines, operating a mine, and financing a mine. And as we need new skills within the company, we'll add them to the company. And you know, that's one of the processes. Great Bear is always in flux, it's always in a state of growth, and we're always growing towards the next goal along the line, which in our case is being able to build out a major mining project. The thing is, to the other flip side of your question, there are no juniors like us that operate a project like this in the world, because they do all get purchased. So Our intention is to capture as much value as possible, and we want to make sure that happens for our shareholders. Ultimately, we would be a real anomaly in the industry if we were able to take this thing all the way through to production and operation on our own. It just doesn't happen very often.
Well, so to conclude, what differentiates Great Bear Resources from other exploration companies, and why is now a good time to invest?
The best answer to your question, what sets us aside? We do have shareholder value at heart. There are only 57 million shares issued and outstanding with Great Bear. Every time we've raised money over the past 4 or 5 years, it's always been at a higher price because we are careful with our spends. We never raise more or spend more than we need to. And the other aspect is really the strength of the asset. If you look at what we have as an underlying asset, there's a larger set of very nice drill results over a bigger area than any of the competing junior mining companies in the space. There's just more a system, more gold-bearing mineralization present at Dixie than you see elsewhere. It's in a tier 1 mining jurisdiction and has the potential to be a major project. So we're not flashy, we're not showy. I'm a geologist, our partners are largely geologists. We just want to advance this project down the way, and it's not based on, we never want to get to the position where we're over promoting and under delivering what we have. We always want that to be the exact opposite. We want to over deliver, and we always want to over deliver on what we have. So we're quiet, we're steady, and we're going to get there across the finish line and show the value of what we found here at Dixie.
Thank you for joining us for this C-Suite interview presentation brought to you by ChannelChek. Visit our YouTube channel for more interview content, as well as virtual roadshows and conference presentation replays. New content is added regularly, so subscribe below to stay up to date. Visit channelchek.com or click the link in the description to access equity research, news, and advanced market data on this and the 6,000 other small and micro-cap companies listed.